The astrology of the week of July 7th, Monday through Thursday, is especially busy and exciting. Astrologically speaking, that is. And we have a full moon in Capricorn on Thursday, the 11th. Excuse me as I'm getting my little amateur setup all together here. So we have a full moon in Capricorn on Thursday, which is the 11th. And that's not even the most notable transit of the week by far. By far, that prize definitely goes to Uranus entering Gemini on Monday. Today, as I'm recording this video, I'm going to go ahead and mark it here on our chart. My hope is always that if you're studying astrology and you enjoy following along with the chart, that my little notations here are helpful. And if you're just interested in listening to the astrology, that this is helpful for you too. That's always my intention. Okay, so Uranus moving into Gemini is a really, really big deal. So I'm excited to talk about this week with you and discuss everything. So Uranus changes signs every 7.5, 8 years. Uranus moved into Taurus, where it has now left in 2018, in May of 2018. And Uranus is about change. So we really tend to feel what's going on with Uranus. It tends to be not just change, but surprising change. I even want to use the word shocking change. And so that's why sometimes even when you think you know what's happening with the Uranus transit, you really don't. It's a transit that is best understood. It's a planet whose signification is best understood by sort of expecting the unexpected. So this is a transit that we tend to really feel. And Uranus will be in Gemini for 8 years, 7.5 years. And Gemini is all about, and we only have a few months here, and then Uranus is going to retrograde back into Taurus for a little while, but we're getting a taste of it. And Uranus in Gemini is change on change, right? Uranus loves that change, that shocking change, doing things differently in a new way. And Gemini is completely game for that, right? So this is a powerful change that is going to affect us all because, in a way, it was more difficult when Uranus was in Taurus because Taurus doesn't like change. And so Uranus was working through a part of our charts where we really wanted things to be stable and consistent, and instead everything was changing and getting shook up. So if you are a Taurus, like a Taurus sun, or even if you just have significant points in Taurus, moon sign, rising sign, even Mars and Venus and Mercury, Uranus leaving that house is going to really feel like a relief. So anyway, what is better, to have change multiplied by change, which is sort of what we have when Uranus is working with Gemini, or to have change happening in a place where we really want to be stable? Well, I think that this change is going to be really welcome. I think that this Uranus and Gemini energy is going to feel better than that Uranus and Taurus energy, but it's going to move things forward quickly. And I'm going to keep building on these energies. I'm going to show how this Uranus connects in a powerful outer planet triangle. See this triangle right here? I want to talk about that because this Uranus is part of a bigger story. But first, let's just, spend a few minutes on Uranus and Gemini by itself. So we're taking things that are Gemini and Uranus is working with those things, right? So when we talk about that change upon change, think about Gemini things and those things accelerating in as in new and shocking ways, right? Quickly and in ways that surprise us. So, new ideas, new mindsets, new ways of thinking, new ways of communicating. Education and learning will shift and will accelerate and change in shocking ways in the 7 years ahead. Maybe something about childhood could shift in some kind of way. I think connected to education, but Gemini sort of rules adolescence as well. There could be something in there. Certainly learning, communicating, the way we share information. And it's true that you don't have to be an astrologer to know that, right? We can look at the world around us and say, well, yeah, that's definitely the case. But I mean, I'm just saying what the astrology suggests. And it's important for us to know individually that this is going on, especially if you have planets in early Gemini, but really wherever Gemini is in your chart, if you know that, Uranus is moving in there and is going to accelerate and bring in newness, new ideas to that part of your chart over the course of next 7 years in ways that you can't really anticipate now. So even if you're looking at it and you go, oh yeah, I can see that. I can see that happening. Don't get too comfortable with that would be my advice, because Uranus can be a little bit of a roller coaster. It can bring us through sort of ups and downs. But yeah, in terms of the collective, that's what's going on. And in terms of us individually, it's important to note that as well. I want to keep talking about this, and we will continue to talk about Uranus and Gemini quite a lot, but I just have to get into this outer planet triangle now, because it's really a part of this story. So when Uranus moves into Gemini on Monday, it comes into it's not exact, but a loose triangle with these other points in the sky, right? Aries, we have Uranus at 0 degrees of Gemini. We have Saturn and Neptune at 1 and 2 degrees of Aries. So that Neptune there is the outer planet that I'm speaking of. Right now, Saturn happens to be there as well. Neptune newly in Aries. Bringing in new dreams, new visions, new ways of connecting with others. And Saturn is giving us the structure to help us really build here. So wherever you have Aries in the chart, this is a place where you're building right now. And just to mention, I'm not anywhere near done this report, but just to mention that in my horoscopes for July, I do take this through the different parts of the chart by rising sign horoscope. So if you're enjoying this video, maybe come back and finish it later, or finish it now and then go check out your horoscope on my channel for July, because by rising sign, if you know your rising sign, is best, because it shows the life areas in each chart where this is happening, which is significant. But I think that speaking about it generally is really, really important too. So Neptune and Saturn together, it's like bringing in a new dream and helping us have the structure, the discipline, the understanding to actually build it. So wherever Aries is in your chart, you're starting something new that you really, really care about. Okay. And then, and the world's going through that. The world is going through, collectively, we're going through this process of starting something new that we really, really believe in. We don't know exactly where it's going yet, but there's a dream and we're trying to build it. And then we have this Uranus energy that I just spoke about, just to remind you of the new ways of communicating, an accelerated change to Gemini areas, to learning, to education, to communicating, to sharing ideas, things of this nature, to having fun. Gemini loves to have fun. You know what else can accelerate with Uranus and Gemini, what's a little bit of a Gemini thing, not being 1,000% honest. Gemini wants to tell a good story. Whether that story is true or not is less important than the story being a good story. So that's another thing that Uranus could sort of accelerate. Having a good time, keeping things sort of light, keeping things fun, even at the sacrifice of, well, maybe I should separate the two. I think there's that side of it. And then there's also the potential to accelerate ways of being deceiving. We could see that showing up in the world too, is more of a shadow side of this. Okay, then Pluto in Aquarius is also in a trine to this Uranus. So Pluto is at 2 degrees of Aquarius. Pluto's kind of the outer planet that has been the first to usher in, to step us into this new era. But you can see here something amazing. I'll say more about Pluto and Aquarius, but these planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, they do not change signs very often. Uranus is every 7, 8 years. Pluto is every 15 to 20 years. Neptune is every, what is it, like 12 years, 14 years? I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it's more than a decade. And they all are changing signs from late 2024 to mid 2026. And right now we're in a period where they are sort of going back and forth because some will retrograde out of these placements. Pluto's the only one that is there for good now. Neptune will go into Pisces, Uranus will go into Taurus. But just to say, right now, this summer, all these planets are where they're going to be, right? This week, for the first time, these planets are all in their new placements and they're harmoniously connecting with each other. These are positive, they're connecting in positive, supportive ways. This is a trine, these are sextiles, right? Pluto is sextile Saturn and Neptune. Saturn and Neptune are sextile Uranus. Uranus and Pluto are trine one another. Excuse me. I'm getting very excited about this astrology, and I'm trying to explain a lot here. I hope that it's making sense. So, just to say, astrology is so interesting. At any point in history, even thousands of years ago, right, they would have looked at this chart and they would have said, I mean, we hadn't discovered some of these planets yet, but if we had, if they knew those signatures using the ancient principles of astrology, in terms of the trines and the sextiles, these planets are newer planets. So it's harder to talk about ancients understanding current astrology, but I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent there that maybe wasn't super helpful. But just to say, it's crazy how you don't have to be living in this time to interpret this astrology as moving towards the future in new and exciting ways. Pluto in Aquarius is helping us as well with technology. Aquarius rules technology and information. It's sort of, there's a weird way in which Aquarian energy is very connected and sort of detached at the same time. We're together, yet we're apart. It always kind of reminded me of connecting virtually, because it's like Aquarius is sort of with people, but also really doing its own thing, really separate. And there's sort of a detachment, an emotional detachment that's a part of this. And so I wonder about that, you know? I wonder about us all sort of coming together in new ways with Pluto and Aquarius, technology accelerating, us having to grapple with things from the past that we haven't grappled with. This is a powerful triangle. I actually want to just talk about it in a few different ways. Breakthrough ideas. When we put all of this together, There could be sort of breakthrough ideas, like a spark of an idea that leads to a real transformation. Um, there's the mental innovation of Uranus and Gemini, the collective evolution of Pluto and Aquarius, and then sort of a spiritual vision with Neptune and Aries. So there could be these sort of breakthrough sparks of ideas that feel really, really future oriented, that feel like they're sort of carrying a higher purpose. We could be connecting and communicating with others in a different way with this square. Um, the Gemini energy sort of wants to disrupt the way that we communicate, the way that we share ideas. And then with Neptune involved, that could sort of mean communicating in a different way, maybe in more symbolic ways or in ways that are more detached but still connected. I think that there's a way in which this outer planet triangle suggests that technology could be changing in unexpected ways. There could be ways of connecting that technology is aiding us in, ways of learning that technology aids us in. And then not only is the new coming in with this kind of a transit, but you also have to know and imagine the old going out, right? Old systems of thought beginning to dissolve. Pluto is completely down to destroy outdated energies or systems that don't make sense anymore. In order for things to update, our personal philosophies, collective philosophies, ways of moving through the world, we have to let go of what was. There can be a real creative spark. This triangle is holding all summer, July through September, late September. So there can be like a fresh energy with this. And that's kind of where the creative spark comes from. It's like renewed, it's refreshed. So groups can really undergo huge resets during times like this. Leadership changes, power shifts, power dynamics moving and changing. And I think it's really good for us all to tap into our own unique voice at this time, so that we can contribute to those groups resetting, redoing things, reorganizing themselves in ways that are really authentic. There can be an idealism to this triangle that's actually really positive and that we should be bringing into things. So it's a good summer for slowing down and making sure to tap into your own voice, because we're contributing to things right now that could have long lasting effects. And so we want to do that in a way that isn't trying to please others, but really is trying to bring our own positivity, our own voice, our own discernment, abilities, beliefs, energy to our projects, to our relationships, to the groups we belong to. I just want to mention too, with this triangle, and then I think maybe we can move on. I'll check my notes. I want to talk about that full moon at the end of the week as well. But I want to mention that with this triangle, you could notice synchronicities, right? If you're someone who notices things like that, this might be a summer to pay attention to little signs, little messages from the universe, little symbols sort of pointing you toward the right direction and away from the wrong direction. Because I don't know, there's just a bit of magic to this triangle. Okay, so let me just look at my notes real quick to make sure that I've discussed everything about this triangle that I wanted to discuss. Oh, I did want to mention that I'm actually going to get rid of this part for this. We see, well, let me just show you here. We see, I'll circle it. I like to put the little notes on the chart, and I hope that it's helpful. I know it's not a lot, but sometimes it can get really too much, and I can be adding too much. I've been restrained today. We've been talking about uh, one or two transits really intensely, rather than sometimes when I get too many going up here at the same time. Okay, I just wanted to say that Venus and Uranus were conjunct at 29 degrees of Taurus over the weekend on Friday. And so that was building at the end of last weekend and was active on Friday. They were conjunct, and that was really interesting. It was like a surprise, little surprises when it comes. There was something. What happened this weekend that surprised you? What happened on Friday that surprised you? There's some message there that it probably was relational, like in relationship in some kind of way, or in terms of how you relate to others, or something that actually happened in a connection. There's something about that energy that's being carried into Uranus, and Venus are both carrying that energy into their transits through Gemini. There was something significant about what happened there. Uh, and the surprising nature of it, there can be an urgency at the 29th degree that can compel us to surprises, um, that can compel the surprises themselves, right? There's that restlessness at the 29-degree point, but there's something about that spark of surprise and shock that came in that can help you tap it. If you had something like that come in this weekend, that's Uranus. That's what I mean by this surprise, that way in which Uranus is kind of shocking. You think you knew what it was going to be, but it was a little different than that. And that's Uranus. Uranus is changes things, shifts things, moves things forward quickly. So I wanted to mention that conjunction was significant, and also that they're carrying the energies of that conjunction with them this week, and really through their transits through the sign of Gemini altogether. And it was a lovely energy in a lot of ways. But it could be difficult for some as well, but whatever it is, it's sort of moving things forward in a way that's helping us learn and grow. I also wanted to mention the duality of Uranus and Gemini. We talked a lot about Uranus and Gemini here in terms of those new ideas, changes to learning, changes to communication. Another thing is the duality of the Venus signature. It could be that there are two different ways of viewing the world, at least two different ways that come into focus. And that could be in terms of the way we understand it, like politically, for example. It could be two different ways of thinking. I've heard some say perhaps it's related to, people who are over 35 or over 40, maybe, lived in a world where they didn't have computers, where we didn't always have technology. And then anyone who's younger than that has never lived in that world. And in some ways, is that splitting our experience? If you grew up with an iPad and you have always connected virtually with people, and maybe do that more with your friends than connecting in person, you have a very different experience than someone who's in their 70s and had a large portion of their life, even their adult life, without these technologies. So is that perhaps the duality of this Uranus into Gemini? There's lots of different thoughts about it. There's also thoughts about twins and like meeting twins. Maybe seeing ourselves in others in all kinds of different ways. Feeling more connected to one another. Pluto and Aquarius sort of suggests that too. And so does Saturn and Aries and Neptune and Aries in a way. It's like being together, although we're apart, understanding the ways in which all of humanity is connected. I think that really could be a very cool manifestation of Uranus and Gemini. And I should do a separate video just about Uranus and Gemini. I really should. I need to maybe have a conversation with another astrologer or something. If anyone's listening to this and would like to collaborate, let me know. Perhaps I can ask my friend Corinne as well. But we're just getting a taste of Uranus in Gemini here. It's just going to be here for a few months. So definitely take a look at those horoscopes on my channel. I'm going to move on and talk about the full moon here in a second, but just to say before we leave here, check out those horoscopes on my channel to see where this falls in your chart. That could be really helpful. But you can see it's just sort of a big collective change that's going on really all summer, and it's a big deal. And Uranus moves into Gemini this week. Okay, so now let's put something else on the chart. On Thursday, we have a full moon in Capricorn. So the light from that full moon is coming over from the sun. When the sun is opposing the moon, we have a full moon. So the sun is in Cancer right now. And you can see, well, let's just talk about the full moon first. I am going to add another layer to this, but first let's just focus in on this full moon. I like a Capricorn full moon, and this is kind of building throughout the week, so you might notice this really Monday through Thursday. I like a Capricorn full moon because it's so practical. And I think it works for Capricorn. Well, full moons are about sort of culmination and clarity. Capricorn loves culmination and clarity. Capricorn's all about sort of goals and responsibilities and inner authority and boundaries. And so having some sort of clarity about those kinds of things feels right with a full moon in Capricorn. We can sort of reflect on what we've been building and whether or not the foundations are where they should be to carry us forward. We can look back on the last 6 months and forward to the 6 months ahead and have some sort of clarity about long-term goals, especially in the Capricorn part of your chart. Thank you for your questions. Please leave your questions in the comments and I will absolutely get to them at the end of this report. So if you know your chart and you know where Capricorn is in your chart, that could be the place where you're having sort of some of that clarity about long-term goals. But they could be Capricorn related things in general. It tends to be more practical, more work related, career related, finance related, perhaps. Grounded goals, practical goals. Sometimes with a Capricorn full moon, we could face the pressure of perfectionism. That's sort of one of the challenges of Capricorn, is learning to release that. One of my favorite things about Capricorn energy, people with a lot of Capricorn energy in their chart, to say is that they're old when they're young and they're young when they're old. And if you think about Capricorns, that's so true. They often have serious sort of difficult childhoods in some way, are asked to grow up early in some way for some reason. And then as they get older, they find a lightness. And I think part of that is because of this releasing of the pressure of perfectionism that sometimes Capricorn energy can trigger. But through that triggering, we can sort of learn that we don't have to be perfect. That's how you confront the idea that, and have breakthroughs about not needing to be perfect, is coming up against that lens. And so Capricorn does that over the course of their life, and they sort of learn that their worth doesn't have to come from constantly efforting through things, and they can kind of put that down, and it makes them these light, fun adults who really play and laugh and enjoy themselves and are young when they're old and old when they're young. So where we can all have a bit of that energy right now, both the trigger of the feeling of the need to be perfect and the ability to drop it and let it go and not go that way anymore. So it can be sort of breakthroughs in terms of perfectionism, breakthroughs in terms of boundary setting. This is a time when we can take stock of, have I taken on too much? Am I doing more than is really my fair share here? And we can ask others for help if it has become too much. You know, it's a little bit of a reality check. And then that reality check sort of leads to more peace because we realize maybe where we've been overextended, where we've overcommitted, and we can ask for a little bit of help. There can be public recognition with a Capricorn full moon. There can also be just sort of a quiet inner validation, inner knowing. We can have like parent child, especially father, mentor, child type energies come up with this too. Capricorn rules those father themes. So it's a chance again for sort of those themes sometimes to be triggered, but then also healed. Letting go of, feeling like you need to do something alone, feeling like you have to carry it by yourself. I think this energy, especially because that light is shining from the Cancer sun, that Cancer sun wants to help, wants community, wants family, wants to ask for some support where needed. So we can sort of see our own strength at this time and see the limits of it and ask others for help. We can think about where we're going and where we've been really clearly. We can set goals. We can be honest with ourselves. We can take responsibility. We can assign responsibility where needed. So yeah, it's about patience. It's about perseverance. It's a nice full moon. It's very practical, right? And then just the full moon is always kind of a party. The full moon is always a good time. It's a good time to enjoy friends and family. I do want to point something else out about this full moon, though, that's really important and actually adds to the positivity of the signature. And that's that we actually have this mystic rectangle. Maybe you even see it on the chart. So see the triangle that we had before, right? When we were talking about those outer planets. And you see the rectangle here? It's with the nodes. Okay, so we have a sextile from the sun to the south node, and we have a sextile from the moon to the north node. We also have a trine from the moon to the south node, and we have a trine from the sun to the north node. Isn't that beautiful? So sextiles and trines are the easy, supportive, pleasant connections between planets. It means these planets connect with each other easily. They help each other to be heard. They help each other to express. They don't make it more difficult. They make it easier. So all of these planets come online a little bit more easily when they're together. Okay. So that's really cool. So we're bringing in the nodes to this conversation that we just had about this full moon. And this can help us in different ways. So I feel like it's possible that we could be reconciling or grappling with something that's really been going on for a long time. The nodes are sort of fateful. They are they're very significant. They're the most significant part of the chart, to be honest. We don't talk about it as much because they're slow moving, and I don't know, they're not planets that people know about the way that people know about maybe a Mercury retrograde or Venus or something. But I think the nodes are probably the most powerful part of the chart. If you study astrology as well, which I know a lot of you do, what do you think? Will you put in the comments, what do you think is the most powerful part of a chart? I think it might be the nodes. They are really, they're pulling in our fate and our destiny and what's meant for us in whatever part of the chart they're working through. They allow us to let go of what's not working and bring in what is working. And let go of the lower vibrations of a sign and bring in the higher. So for example, right now, we have the South Node in Virgo and the North Node in Pisces. The South Node in Virgo is helping us let go of perfectionism, of the need to overplan, overdo, overschedule, run, do a million things. And the North Node in Pisces is bringing in connecting in a different, more mystical way, being more spiritually connected to ourselves and to others. surrendering in a way, not needing to always push forward, following our intuition and our gut, realizing that doing things from a place of love and fun and alignment helps us to get better results than just working hard. So wherever the South Node is, it gives us an opportunity to let go of the negative sides of that signature. The negative sides of Virgo can be over-planning, over-scheduling, overdoing, needing to be perfect. And the North Node, we bring in the positive sides of that signature. Pisces, this higher, more spiritual connection. Surrender, following the guidance, our inner guidance, different higher levels of wisdom and thought, spiritual alignment, connecting with others in such authentic and real and meaningful ways, connecting with our world in such real and meaningful ways, our own emotions, all of that. So bringing that into this full moon signature is really cool, isn't it? I think we could be grappling with something, having that reckoning with something that's really been stuck, really being able to move forward with something that's been tough to move forward. They say that a mystical rectangle is like a container, a mystic rectangle, excuse me, which is what this configuration is called. It sort of creates a container in the chart for healing and for integration. So all different parts of our lives are being sort of healed and integrated together through the support of each other around the time of this full moon, which again happens on Thursday, but is active throughout the week as we build into this, especially the later part of the week, Wednesday and Thursday. I think conversations and experiences that we're having towards the later part of the week can help us with this shift, so pay attention to what comes up. Both of these signatures, the outer planet triangle and this full moon in Capricorn, are covered in my horoscopes on my channel for July. If you want to see where this is falling for you, which life areas, best watch for your rising sign. Astrology is best used as a tool for introspection, not as something that we should use to sort of predict what's going to happen. And I feel like a lot of the people who watch this channel really understand this and that we're really aligned in this way. And I just want to mention it just to sort of clarify that that's where I am and that's how I feel about it. It moves the locus of control. If we look at astrology and we kind of go, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? It makes it so that that's how we think about life. We think of life as something that happens to us. And that's not what it is. And that's not what astrology is. We are co-creating this world with each other, with the world itself, with our potentials, and we have a tremendous influence. And astrology is a tool to help us learn about ourselves and help us learn about the world and make good choices and lean in the right directions and understand ourselves and others better. It's not about saying what's going to happen. And I just wanted to mention that today. I'm looking at my comments now. Okay. Yeah, so whole sign versus Placidus house system. Great question. So there are two different house systems. Placidus was very popular decades ago, right? 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s. Placidus was the most popular house system. I used Placidus myself. I switched over when I began to learn more about whole sign houses, which is it was used for a longer period in history. As we've all learned more and more about Hellenistic astrology, as different texts have been translated, Chris Brennan's work has been incredible. We have sort of unpacked how long a whole sign house system was really being used in the ancient world. And I had a really, and so we all sort of started to work with it. Some of us started to work with it and discovered that it was more accurate, and that's what happened to me. And I changed in 2018, actually. So it's interesting that this should come up now because it was right when Uranus moved into Taurus. I went to an astrology conference. I went to UAC in 2018 in Chicago, the United Astrology Conference, and met some great teachers there, studied some great astrology, and then at the end decided to switch to whole sign houses. And then I spent a couple weeks in bed, basically integrating this change. Not literally, but it rocked my world. Like my Venus moved from the fourth house to the fifth house. That blew my mind. Um, it changed my chart, and that was really interesting to work with. But when I looked back, when I looked at both options, I just see more accuracy by far with whole sign house system. So I had to change. It's a subtle difference. It doesn't make a difference in a lot of people's charts, but it does sometimes. And it does in some key ways, usually in most people's chart, really. Some are changed more or less than others, but there are elements of the astrology that hold regardless of the house system you use, and then there are some changes that come in. The thing that really convinced me was looking at dates when outer planets changed signs and whether or not something happened in those houses for me around those times. Usually when the planet moved into that house and sign for good. So like this Uranus into Gemini, this is just the first time, right? Uranus is going to go back to Taurus, so we would have to wait. But like, for example, that Pluto in Aquarius that we had, was it over the winter when Pluto finally moved into Aquarius? That would be one to check out. Or this Neptune into Aries more recently. I looked at transits like that and I really noticed how much it lined up with big changes in my life. And as I used it with others, I just found the whole sign to be more accurate. And it's a happy coincidence that it makes it a lot easier to do this work online and these horoscopes and this work on YouTube. So you will find most YouTube astrologers are using whole sign houses because it's just makes more sense for communicating about astrology on a mass level like this without seeing individual charts. But I decided to switch to this house system long before I decided to do YouTube. So I'm going to link here to a Neptune retrograde video that I recently did and a video about Jupiter and Cancer. Both of those videos are relevant to the current astrology. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful week. It's an exciting one. Check out those videos if you'd like, or the horoscopes on my channel. Have a great week.